We are well into 2024, and it is now time for our bold predictions, hot takes heading into this NRL Fantasy season. We're going to be going team by team, 3 in each of them, and let's see how these predictions play out. Some of them are fairly straight bat, some are a little bit out there. I know a few people commented last year saying that they weren't out there enough, but it's very hard to even have a general idea from some of these sort of guys that we have no idea about, or how teams are going to line up. So these are all predictions of how I think some players might start, some players might be through the middle of the season, and if they're going to make money, if they're going to be a bit of a flop as well. So let's get into the Brisbane Broncos. I'm going to kick it off with Brendan Piakura. He comes in at $399K, and he's one of those guys that I think is going to surpass that 600K mark within the first 10 rounds. And I think he'll be a sell somewhere between that 10 to 13 period where their buys start to come up there. And you probably want to get rid of him, I think, around that time, just for the fact I don't see him being a Preston type. There's a little bit too much ball to go around, and he'll have his opportunities. And I think he'll have a stretch of games where he averages close to that 50 mark. He may have the odd game that's sort of 35 to 40, but overall he'll be a guy that can quickly get up to around that point and average somewhere in that sort of low 40s and get to that 600K price point, which would be great. And it's exactly what we need to start our money-making capacity and cycle through these guys. And Piakura will be one of those guys that we don't hold throughout the entire year. Fletcher Baker at $360K. I think he's going to average the 35 in the 40 minutes over the first 6 rounds. They're very easily going to have him as the guy to slot in as that first guy off the bench, likely, or they can start with him and keep Jensen in the same role that he had last year. He'll get that 40 minutes, and that's all he's going to need to average that 35. And I think we'll need to sell him soon after as he starts to drop off, just because he hasn't been playing those minutes in a good while. Obviously, playing a lot of games of NRL last year, not as much in New South Wales Cup. So, minutes in the top grade, close to 40, is going to be pretty tough on these big fellas. So I think he'll drop off from there and be a good time to trade him out. Dean Mariner at $450K, the centre and wing fullback duel. There is a slight worry that is fairly expensive to start with, given he is in the early 30s of a price point. The dual position is very helpful. I just think with him, there's a high likelihood of him being a 40+ point keeper in the centres, or if he's on the wing as well. I think he could step up into that sort of Selwyn Cobbo type land, just with how quality the team is at this point, where there's so many tries and assists to go around. If he's in centre, obviously outside of that of Ezra Mam and Walshy there. So I think but my main issue here is I think there's a good chance that he scores low early and then people sell, therefore missing out on his value across the season with his duel. So he could be a really interesting one. If you don't start with, I think you can get away with him sort of, plodding along with the 30 odd or a 40 with the try and sort of not making too much money, and then ready for when Broncos have a pretty good draw and he kind of works himself into first grade, and he can go boom from there and be a 40+ guy over stretches, and most people can make their money that way, but there'll be people that start with him and sell him fairly early. Bulldogs, Bronson Xerri. I think at $450K, it's a pretty hefty price for someone who hasn't been in the game for 4 years. So I have him as averaging what he's priced at or less, and that's if he even makes the squad. So that's that with Bronson. Jacob Kiraz, as Scoop and I spoke about in that video, we both really like him. So I think he'll average 47 this year when fit, if he's in the centres there. So a +7 on his price. I actually do think on the wing there in a better team, the Dogs, if they can step up, that he'll be a pretty solid fantasy option this year in that tough position at a sort of mid-range-ish price there. Number 3 for the Dogs, I think they'll improve enough to suck us in on some fringe money makers, probably except Curran, but could be including him as well, with Kurt Mann ruining value for a few forwards, and I'm including Reid Marnie in that as well. So yeah, it's an interesting one, how that's going to play out with a few of those guys, especially in that Bulldogs outfit. For the Cowboys there, I forgot to put the prices in, but Jeremiah Nanai, I think he bounces back and will lure a few in, just to probably disappoint in the end. So he's one of those guys that can be very, very frustrating, could have really good games, but the missed tackles, the lower minutes, there's a few things that aren't in his, aren't going to go his way likely. But I think he'll lure in a few people, that's for sure. Cotter, he's going to play big minutes from the jump, 60+. That's going to be the little outlandish call. If I start with him, that's kind of where I'm at the moment. I'm very much hoping land that he's going to play more than that 60 minutes or somewhere around that point and be able to average well. His average was right down last year. Base stats were down a good chunk, especially tackles. So hopefully that can go up for sure over that period. And the Cowboys will bounce back and finish 6th on the ladder. I think that, I'm hoping, again, for the Cowboys fans here. So bringing Robson, Holmes, Drinky with them for some good scoring as well. So Robson bounce back, Holmes to maybe go close to 50, and Drinky to stick around that 50 mark as well. For the Titans there, Jaden Campbell at 459. At some point this season, he will become a 700k player. So obviously pretty outlandish on that one. That gets him closer to a 50 average, just above that actually, or close to it. So for Campbell there, that's huge, and I think that could definitely happen if he gets a sort of a stretch of games in a row where he can show his stuff, and the Titans have stretches of parts of the season where they do really, really well. I think he can get to that 700k barrier at some point. Both for more, I think at 660k, he's going to start slow, and he's going to become a buy at 550k, covering round 16 and 19 major buys. So he might be sort of through that middle part, or potentially sort of that round 8, 9, 10 kind of range for him. Thomas Weaver, I've got him at 450k, obviously a frustrating price, but he gets the opportunity to lock down the 7 at some point and make us 100k plus, because I think he'll be close to about a 40 guy next to Foreign, and if he does play 6, then he could lose a little bit of cash, but I think at some point he's going to play that 7 and take over from Tanner Boyd. If there's going to be some stretch of games where they have a bit of a tough one, or he just improves naturally, and I just have a feeling he's going to be that guy to make some money. Dolphins, Jeremy Marshall-King at 650k. I just think he may not make more than 50k, but if you start with him, you won't be mad about him playing the whole season. You still look at 2022, he played the clear full season with the Dogs, and it was just this shoulder issue. So if he gets that right, I see him playing the entirety of the season, averaging around 50 and playing all 3 major bye rounds. I see the Dolphins players like him. Probably the only one that's going to be of relevance, like I've got there in number 3. Given they'll be a fairly middling team, I just don't think they'll offer too much fantasy relevance this season like they did last year. So JMK, a very interesting one to partner with another hooker, I'd imagine, given he has the bye in round 3. Flegler at 513k. For me, he needs 55 minutes to be relevant, and so I don't think that's going to happen. Gilbert only got 58 minutes at lock, and I see Flegler being a 50 max, and I think he'll suck a few in, given he was the second to third big dog at the Broncos. I can see him coming over here being sort of a number 1 guy, but still not averaging ridiculous minutes there. So that's the Dolphins. Move to the Eels, and I think they make it back into the 8 this season, with Moses eclipsing a 60 average. So best season for him last year, made it into Origin. I think he'll go bigger than that this year. He scored really well even when Brown was there. He obviously took over a little bit more when Brown wasn't, but I think Gutho took a lot of those points rather than Moses taking extra in that point. So yeah, Moses was great, and they'll bounce back. Number 2, when injuries in Origin comes along, I think Widemu Greg at 336 is going to make 100k. So last year he had scores that were around that point. At minimum, he would have got into about a 500k or so. But I don't expect as many injuries, but I think he's a very good player. A good bench guy for him, and if he can get those minutes, then that could be really cool. And the third one there, Lane at 558k. I just think he's going to be a slow burn moneymaker with plenty of traffic going down the right-hand side, as you can see with Moses really improving as a player and demanding a lot of ball, and Cardi or Matto down that right-hand side. And I think we'll make his money when he finds some form lane, but not straight away. So I think it'll be a slow burn for Shawnee on that one. He's already got priced up into the 41 range, which is pretty frustrating at that. For the Rabitos there, Tavita Totola at 485. I think he's going to be a safe scorer in your 17 and a comfortable 100k plus moneymaker, if obviously the concussions and the injuries stay away. So a nice off season for him. He had a really tough year, and up and down. And 2022, the back end was great, and you saw a few big minute games at the end of last year. And if that's the case, then he's already got sort of 5 to 7 points of value based off that. But if he can get anywhere back to that, I think that he could, 7 to 8 points of money there is pretty much at the 100k in value, and he could eclipse that as well. So fairly low risk guy, I think, in Totola heading into this season. Tallis Duncan at 413k breaks out into being a stud by the end of 2024. There could be an injury around as well that kind of gets him into, really high averages there. But at some point, I think he's going to do a job and make some money for us. So we'll really enjoy having him around is more what I'm getting at here. Number 3, the Bunnies bounced back with multiple players being fantasy relevant again. Cam Murray, Latrell Mitchell, Tyrone Munro, I'm likely going to start with as well, Tola and also Duncan. So that's plenty of players there that you could be looking at into your side. Dragons are up next. I have a feeling Dragons will be a super frustrating team for our fantasy hopefuls. And yeah, it's just the gut feeling I have with guys like Eisenhuth potentially getting minutes or not. Jacob Little, Zach Lomax, the fullback center debate, and then Kyle Flanagan as well with Volkman. So number 2, I've got Volkman in there. This is just my thoughts on how I probably want it to go, but who knows. Volkman at 385. I just think they've brought him over for cover because they don't really have much in terms of halves. They got Paul Turner over there as well, but easily you could lose a couple of halves in a row and you need multiple. So Volkman comes over for that to cover mainly for Flanagan, who I think is going to get the first crack. And then number 3, Little at 535k. I think he makes it over a 600k, so 70 plus worth of value there. Being a viable round 1 starter in your side as a hooker. He has really great upside, but he can be risky for him not making much money. Just given that he has games where he gets sort of the mid-30s to high 30s, and then he'll have a 50 game in him. Can he string a bunch of them together and make you good money? I think at one point he'll get there, but how much further than that? I'm not sure. And do you want that in your side? They don't have a buy for a good while? It seems like a fair option if you think that he, if Flanagan's not on the bench and taking some minutes from him, he could do really well now that Mbai's gone. For the Roosters, Tedesco at 670k will be a buy in round 5, costing 599k. Not specific at all. With the Roosters 2-2 following a tough run, but they won't start as poorly this year. We're going to go with it, but 2-2 seems fair. They got a really tough one. They got the Panthers in round 4, and then round 5. I think he's going to be a solid buy. Given his history, I don't think he's going to go shocking a couple of years in a row. We'll see though. Siwa Wong, 444k, gets first crack at the right edge and plays about 60 minutes per game, averaging 39. So it's actually about 5 points of value to start the year. I can just see him starting that way, and he could definitely make some more money at some point. But if he gets that start and you've got Tupanua on the bench, who I think will be, he'll either play a little bit through the middle or a bit off the bench. Like if Crichton's on the bench as well, then that means Nat Butcher's starting and he's getting close to that 80 minutes. So one of those edges has to lose a few minutes, and it would be Wong. And I just think that he'd only make a little bit of money at that point. So you'd really need a try or so to begin, and they've got a pretty tough start. So don't really see it happening. But at 444k, if he gets the start, he's in my side. Number 3, I don't see how Terrell May, obviously love him at 492k, doesn't get 40 minutes minimum and is making money from that. It may just be sort of following some injuries though, because he was dominant at the back end of the year, and some of those games were mid-30s minutes, and he had a 40 odd, a 50-minute game, and then was so good through the final series. I just don't see how he misses out. I really want him in my side, but it is going to be hard to work out, and if he does get 30 minutes or something like that, he won't be worth it. We need somewhere around that 40. So frustrating for him, but it's a good chance that he just doesn't get the 40 minutes. I really want him to though, so contradicting myself there, but that's that. Knights, Lucas at 558k is going to be the only relevant player from the Knights to make money in the first 4 weeks. So I don't see Kai Pearce-Paul being ready for a while, and if we find anything more in the preseason, we can just scrap all of our Dylan Lucas chat. But at the moment, I really love him as a 50-point guy over the first month, so he'll make money off that very clearly. Number 2, Ponga's 757k ownership will increase dramatically by around 5. So I can see him having some hot games in that first couple. There will be a few that start with him. I'd say maybe 5 to 10%. I'd say for Ponga there. And if he does do pretty well, I think a lot of people will try and have him in their side as that keeper wing fullback fairly early, especially if we don't see Pap start out too well, or if Campbell starts to struggle a little bit to start. People will try to lock in a good wing fullback early, and that's going to be Ponga. Number 3, we'll make money on Lucas and then also on Pearce-Paul at 520k after his bench stint. So he's way too pricey at the moment, but I think he'll come off the bench to kick things off. Hopefully Lucas isn't losing too many minutes, but we'll see how that plays out. But he'll get down pretty low, and then we'll make money on him as well at some point. Storm, Howarth, 300k, or Blore, 518k. It sounds like he's going to be moving over to the Tigers, to the Storm. We'll wait and see on that one. One of those guys earns Liero's edge spot and become an option in 2024, with Liero either getting injured or moving into the middle. That's the call on that one. Number 2, both Pappy at 495k and Fatlongo, who's not actually in the system yet, will both make us money this season. So I'm not hoping for anything, but there'll be times where they'll both play, I think, in my opinion. Number 3, Grant at 788k goes back to averaging 862 as Storm work things out. So he started 100k more expensive last year, and I think that there's a very high chance that he goes back to that point, and the Storm kind of work things out a little bit. They've been a bit clunky over the last year or so, but I think, if they are able to get Blore as well, that shores up things on the edge and gives them another option in attack as well. And it depends how, if Pappy's back at 495, if he's back in general, they'll play a bit better. If Fatlungo's there as well, I think that gives them another attacking option as well. So they could definitely work things out, and Grant could be a big factor in that. Raiders there, Horsburgh 762k. He's going to play 20 to 25 minutes a lock and sort of 30 to 35 at prop, to accommodate the introduction of Smithies, with Josh Papali'i slowing down as well. I can see that happening for sure, to just give them a bit more grunt up top. With Horsburgh, he's more of a middle, I should say, more of a prop anyway. And Smithies can be that defender in the middle and use his passing game as well. So that's how I see that playing out. Fantasy coaches will get caught out in the Kotrick 261k trap and be like Harley Smith-Shields from last season. I thought that was really fitting. I just wanted to throw that in. Just a little dagger for anyone who owned Smith-Shields and couldn't get rid of him for a long time. Don't worry, I had Tommy Talau, who apparently is going to average 50 this year. I've seen a few of the content creators pop him up there. He's with Jess Surgis at the moment, so everyone's hoping that he'll get the Zach Lomax points. But I highly doubt that, him moving to a new club. I don't even know if he starts, but if he does, I don't know. The treatment of Schuster at Manly, I'm not sure how things are going to go with Tommy there on that one. Number 3, prepare for one of Strange and Weeks to flop. I think it's likely Weeks, which wouldn't be too much of a bold prediction just based on his scoring last year. Part of me also thinks that him moving clubs is going to be better for him. I think he's going to have his hands on the ball more, given they'll need some attacking threats. And I see Strange unlikely to have the kicking that Brad Schneider did a couple of years ago. But at 250k, we wouldn't need him to do too much other than tackle and show a bit of his flair to make money. So I think Strange, if he gets to 6, is very, very safe. Panthers. So Panthers learn from the beginning of last season and they start better. I think they'll show tiredness through the middle of the season before their second bye and Origin there. So they do have a pretty good bye schedule. They're having a bye in round 6 and then a couple through, I think, 16 and 19, I believe it is. So somewhere just before Origin or during Origin, they'll show some signs of tiredness, I think. And potentially some lower scores from certain guys. And other cheaper guys are going to have to stand up. Liam Henry at 320k, I think he makes the 17, but doesn't get the minutes necessary to make enough money. I think he might be in that Spencer Leniu type of range there. And at 320k, if it was 230 or 250, he makes money for sure. At 320, he's already priced in the low 20s there, and I find it hard pressed for him to get 30 in sort of that 35 minutes that he may get. If he gets that many, it could be 30, could be 25. And number 3, I'm just going to go out there and back Sorensen at 683 to be the guy to get us to round 16 all the way through to there with that first bye that they'll be playing. Sorry, that first bye round he'll be playing in round 13. He's got 14 as well. He's dual position and he'll make 50k plus. So simple. There with Sorensen. I'm going to go out on a limb with him, and I'm going to go out on a limb with Jack DeBellin. As 2 guys, unless we hear anything else, they're 2 guys that I'll try to get in my squad as much as I can. And obviously someone having Payne Haas would be ideal as well. Wouldn't be able to get all 3. It might be 2 of the 3. So we'll work that out. Sharkies, Nico Hines at $1 million out averages Cleary in the first 4 rounds. I'm going to go out and say that there. I'm banking on he as I said, he picked up a little niggle at the end of last year, which is why the kick meters went down. He went back into goal kicking, and so 400 meters plus. Thanks to one of the boys in the comments for doing that research in there for me. 400 meters plus in that final game. So I don't expect that to change too much. So with their lovely draw, as I said, I think he was clunky last year. I think he'll start well, and the Panthers and Cleary coming off their travel session over to England, I think he'll start a little bit slower. Not much, but a little bit. And I'm just going to go out there on a limb and say that we'll see Beryl at 230k this season. Brayley has hardly missed a game in 5 years, so he may just be unbreakable, but we'll see. We'll go with the fact that we'll see Beryl and we'll get 3 or 4 weeks or something like that, and he'll make us 100k. Let's roll with that. Tigers, have a bye first round, so be aware of that. Both Bateman are 740k and Papali'i is 716k. They're going to go above their 2023 average. I'm going to go out and say that one. I think both of them were underutilized in attack. I think that the way Brooks used Isaiah Papali'i on that side, Bateman carried injuries coming into the season. He also had a random game off, I think, for a hamstring injury. Quad or hamstring in the warm-up, if you remember that one. I just think both of them will improve their play. And Caesar kind of directing them around. I think they'll just get better ball than what they did last year. Let's just say that. Number 2, I just think at this point, things could change, but just start with Latu Fainu at 230k. If there's any chance that he's starting round 1, you loop him the first week and he'll make money at some point. There'll definitely be an injury to one of those two guys. He will play. He'll either start or he'll be there at some point. You get the loop, potentially loop for the first few weeks at worst if he's not in the team, but I think he'll get an opportunity this year. Jaden Sullivan at 424k will only make money if Caesar misses time. That's what I'm going to go with there. At 6, I'm just going to call out that he doesn't make money. Not enough anyway. He might get to 470, but yeah, so not worth it at 424k. That's for sure there. So yeah, he's only going to make money if Caesar misses some time. Let's go to the Warriors. So Chanel Harris-Tavita, he's at 350k, which is a little bit frustrating, but I think he's going to make money for coaches sometime before Origin, but not from the start. I don't even know if he gets the spot at all, but I think he'll come in at some point, and really it's just not going to be worth the trade in. So a few people are excited about him. I just can't see it working out. You look at a lot of his stats in playing at 5'8" there, and then they're not really too overwhelmingly good anyway. So I think you might get to about 400k or so. But yeah, is that enough? No. Tohu Harris is 736. He's just going to show us again why we should never doubt the big man to begin a season. He's just going to come out and average 60. So that's the call. Did it last year. He's gonna he's gonna be a lot fresher after, unless he's got chronic knee issues. I think he's gonna come out and tackle his heart out and do some great things. His ball playing was incredible all year. It did not matter how his knees were. He was gun in that sense. And then Wade Egan at 587. I think he's just gonna reward coaches in the first month before injury strikes at some point or a concussion with him. He's very heavily in their attack, and he'll score tries. He'll set up tries, play some big minutes in those first bunch of weeks. But something may happen to him. Let's pray that he ends up okay. Manly, Corey Waddell. This is the last one, hey? Corey Waddell at 545. Just going to go out on a limb and say he starts over Schuster in round 1. Yeah, again, I don't know what's happening with Schuster over there. Is he going to be wanting to play edge? Is Waddell even slightly better than him defensively? Yes. So I think that's a decent chance, and Schuster will be there at some point, but don't bank on him being round 1. He could be off the bench. They could, Waddell might come in for him at 30 or 40 minutes. He's not going to come on for Olakuatu. Does Waddell just play in the middle though? I suppose there are a lot of questions. I'm just going to go out and say it. I thought that was a cool little one to go with. And then DCE at 877. I think he averages about 55 over the first 6 rounds, losing that 100k or so. And it's going to be hard for him to become an option at all, given that might be the case. You might get him just for that 6, 7, 8 rounds before Origin. But I think Brooks will take a few points off in there. And then Gordon Chan Kum Tong at 325k. He will get his opportunity, but it will be an awkward 440k. So if Lockie Croker gets a longer term injury, then I don't think it's going to matter what price Gordon is at. But if he's going to be sort of that 30 minutes, he'll probably make a tiny bit of cash there. 325 is his price at the moment. He probably averages close to 30, makes a bit of cash on that. And gets him somewhere around that 400k mark before potentially he gets a start, or he just doesn't become an option at all year, and maybe he doesn't even start at all, given Lockie Croker has times there where he plays a good full 80 minutes. So that's the hot takes, the bold predictions coming into 2024. I made this one as my first video last year. It was probably a little bit early considering we hadn't done enough research and we didn't know enough heading into the season. So hopefully this one being a little bit later, a week into January. Let's see how many of these come through in 2024. Hope you enjoyed that, guys, and I'll catch you in the next lot of videos.